Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressing. This is your other host.
Hello, it's Christina Fasonic. Man, I think we're both in the weeds, right? It's midterm week and right in the middle of the semester. How are you?
That's an outstanding question. I have gotten midterm grades turned in.
Yes.
I have observed more presentations than I can count, and I still have a stack of papers taller than my car.
Yeah, I'm in the same ship as you are. But we
But
can
we're going to
relax.
be taking a fun break this evening.
That's what I was getting ready to say. We can enjoy ourselves for the next 10 minutes or 20 minutes or so. And you want to tell us all who is on the show tonight?
I'd love to. We have Minda Honey this evening. I met her at the wonderful Mountain Heritage Literary Festival at Lincoln Memorial University. She gave a terrific workshop. If you have an opportunity to take a workshop with Minda, I would highly advocate doing so. She brought some really interesting and I think cool perspectives to various literary problems in fiction. It was very it was informative and thought provoking. She her essays on politics and relationships have appeared in Harper's Bazaar, the Los Angeles Review of Books, the Washington Post, the Guardian, the Oxford American Teen Vogue, and Longreads. Her work is featured in Burn It Down, Women Writing About Anger, A Measure of Belonging, Writers of Color on the New American South, and Sex and the Single Women. 24 Writers Reimagine, Helen Gurley Brown's cult classic. Her debut memoir, The HEARTBREAK Years, was released last year, and it is a hilarious and intimate portrait of a Black woman finding who she is and who she wants to be, one bad date at a time. Let's bring out Minda Honey.
I love all of it. I love it all. I mean, so relevant. And I read parts of your work about anger, and it's so true. Today, we talked about Jamaica Kincaid's piece "Girl" in one of my classes, and I was saying, well, but what if she would have gotten like angry and she would have said something back, or she would have, and all this. And a young woman in the back of the room said, well, if she would have gotten angry, then she would have been told that that's not ladylike, and she's a slut. She, all the things that happen in that piece. So thank you for writing about those like super important issues, anger in women, and then relationships and all the things. So, so what are you going to read tonight for us?
Well, first, I just wanted to thank you both for having me. And yes, that was such a great festival. I was so thankful to be invited. I'm going to read to you all from my memoir, The Heartbreak Years, from the final essay, which is about wanting a millennial waiting to exhale. So these are the last few pages of the book, and I'm really kind of reflecting on how, even though things didn't work out the way that I had anticipated or had hoped, that I still have a lot of love in my life, and that essentially no matter what path you go down, there is some flavor of loneliness you will have to contend with.
Got it. Well, we will be back in just a few minutes.
I am thankful all of those men I dated were unanswered prayers. When I was a child, I loved catching lightning bugs. I'd put dozens in a single glass jar and place it on my dresser, watching the magical blinking all night until I fell asleep. Every morning, my father made me release the lightning bugs back into our yard. I'd plead with him to let me keep them, but he insisted that they belonged in their world, not mine. The men I've loved were like those lightning bugs. They flickered beautifully, briefly, but once cupped in my hands, they dimmed and became nothing special. They were meant to light up moments of my life, then be released. It's the women in my life who have held a steady glow for me. The drive from my home to Kay's home is the length of 2 moderately long pop songs. The years she tells me about the painful lump in her breast, so big she can see it through her skin, like a chunk of kryptonite embedded in her chest throbbing. I listened to Panic at the Disco's new song, High Hopes, on endless loop in my car. She is 35. The weekend between her biopsy and receiving the results from her doctor, she asked me to have a drink with her. We do that short girl clamber onto 2 stools at the bar. It's a crowded venue that was designed to look like a series of living rooms. This may be my last drink for a while, she says, raising her glass of bourbon in the air, tapping it against mine, then against the bar before bringing it to her lips. It's cancer. But her husband is the exact husband you would want by your side during cancer. During lunch at a restaurant with a patio that overlooks the Ohio River, rolling murky and brown, Kay tells me about the women in her cancer Facebook groups who've discovered over the course of their illnesses that they do not have the husbands you would want by your side during cancer. Not even close. Husbands who still expect their chemo-choked wives to solely manage the children and the home. Husbands who look at their wives' changing bodies and the changes to come with disappointment. Husbands who check out and hope to check back in when their wives have returned to the right side of healthy. But Kay's husband is pure love, pure patience, and his only want from any of this is for his wife not to die at fucking 35 years old. The state of her tits in the after is irrelevant. She's planned our lunch around her chemo schedule so she can enjoy her food without nausea and the delicate spring weather blooming all around us. We decide to treat ourselves to a few ounces of crab off the raw menu. As she talks, I am happy for her, happy that she married well. I am. But I am also something else, something harder to admit. It's bad form to be jealous of your friend battling cancer. I couldn't help but think about what it'd be like if I were the one stricken with breast cancer at an abnormally young age. Who would be there for me? I imagine myself alone in my gold-framed canopy bed, dehydrated, silently praying for someone to bring me a glass of water, gingerly lifting myself out of bed and creeping into the kitchen to pour my own. On that patio with Kay, I'm convinced that as a single person, I'd be just as in it by myself as one of those Facebook group wives. We've been taught that a spouse is someone to care for you when you're old. A husband as an illness contingency plan isn't the most romantic thing. But when I catalog my fears around never finding my right partner, dealing with aging and poor health alone is a frightening future. But is it more frightening than being married to a man who refuses to honor the in sickness and in health portion of our vows? Do I really need to be frightened at all? When my cousin gets their gender-affirming surgeries, their friends call and visit and feed them and stay with them until they are well enough to care for themselves. They are there, unlike the supposedly obligated husbands who are not. When that man stalked me through my neighborhood, my friends and family reached out immediately, sent cards and flowers, and left baked goods on my steps, did what they could to care for me. Even with Kay, even with the exact husband you'd want by your side during cancer, there's no way he could be all the things she needed without the support of her community. When he travels for work, we walk the dog, we stay with Kay, we are less than a phone call away. There's no point in our lives that our needs aren't too much for one person to handle. Even love does not somehow make it possible for one person to be our everything. Maybe I'm a little more non-monogamous than I thought, at least in my friendships. Kay's love is the sticky, grippy kind of love that isn't afraid to make itself known. Once she is cancer-free, her hair grows back in layers of baby soft curls that sweep over one another in brown waves, a tender ocean providing cover. We cannot say whether our partner will stay if we become ill, or if our health will return in full or at all. We cannot know if our community will be there for us in the short term or the long. Kay and I have discussed how you can't make the choices you make based on the outcomes you can't predict. All we can do is love ourselves, love others, and hope to be loved in return. It's been more than a decade since my last long-term relationship. I consider myself to have mostly spent my adult life single, but I'm not sure that that's actually true. I can't just write off all those short-term revolving door relationships. It's not a failure to leave a situation that is no longer working. Maybe my romantic relationships are so short because in my experience, it's been much easier to be happy without a man than it has been to be happy with a man. This isn't a knock against men, not completely. Aside from compatibility issues, to love a man is to bring the patriarchy into your private life. I don't want to be mansplained to at the office and in the bedroom. I don't want to experience the gender wage gap at work and the gender labor gap over household chores. I gripe that I pay every bill by myself, but I've also been fortunate to be able to pay every bill by myself. I've never had to compromise on my feelings in the name of financial stability. Maybe I'm foolish to be holding out for a relationship of true equals in this patriarchy, but at this point, there's too much at stake. In my 20s, it was easier to fall for men who weren't right for me because so much of my life didn't feel right for me. Those men were portals into alternate realities, potentially better realities. I was searching for a man to build a life around, but in my 30s, I'm waiting to find a man who fits the life I've built. For proof I'm capable of longevity, again, I turn to my friendships. They span decades and multiple states. And for all the real estate I've given dating in my life story, my friendships are the relationships that taught me how to show care and tenderness, to forgive others and myself. One of my first and closest friends in Orange County was E. She was the first person I knew who saw a therapist, or at least the first one who spoke openly about it. Soon enough, well, what did Debbie say about it was a regular part of our conversations. Before E, I was the type of person who'd get upset and end a friendship to prove to someone just how much I didn't need them. But these moments didn't seem to register for her. She continued to show up at the same time to pick me up for the gym and would keep sending me 5,000-word emails in the middle of the workday until I was forced to explain that I was angry at her, tricked into talking about my feelings. After we talked it over, whatever issue I had no longer seemed that serious. In fact, nothing became too big or too small to share with her or her with me. When I told her over dinner in a Vietnamese restaurant that I was leaving California for Colorado, she wept. Whenever I return to Los Angeles, I fly out of Orange County just so I can stay the night with E, curl up on her couch under her fluffy duvet, and sip mugs of tea while we reminisce over our drunk on the dance floor years. Having the love of friends does not stop the wanting, and that doesn't make the love for my friends any less valuable. I don't know where a Black woman nearing 40 should go to find romantic love. But I do know I don't have to go it alone, that I'm not waiting by myself. I can both want more and appreciate that I already have more love in my life than most. A love that has yet to fail me. In a millennial waiting to exhale, just like in the original, the people who choose you, who choose to be by your side, who choose you to be by theirs, are not a consolation prize. They are and will always be your greatest love story, the grandest gesture of love, the epilogue to my heartbreak years. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much. I think you're voicing what so many women are talking about right now. There are new books and new conversations taking place about, decentering romantic relationships and privileging other relationships that are just as significant as romantic ones. And you tell that story really, really well. And I think that there's more to come in this conversation, especially now that I feel like women are more independent than they ever have been before. And that, allows choice in a way that wasn't possible in the past.
Oh, yeah. I mean, women couldn't even get their own credit cards until, what was it, like 69? So
It was like the 70s.
Yeah. So you really didn't have a lot of options but to stay. And, now you do have choices. And, we hear there's a lot of this focus on like the male loneliness epidemic, and women are like, I mean, that's fine, but we can't save them from their own loneliness. Like, they're the ones who have established the patriarchy. They're the ones that have to divest from the patriarchy and be willing to be equal partners. Otherwise, it's very much like, well, what's in it for me? It shows that like divorced single moms do 8 hours less of housework than married women with children, which is wild. So, you really kind of have to, at this point, you really do have to be able to add something to my life, because my life is great.
Yeah, and I think that, we've as a society moved further away from this idea that, your goal in life as a woman is to get married, to be in a couple. I mean, they used to refer to women going to college as getting their MRS degree.
Yeah.
And I think about that and I think, no, I got my PhD. Thank you. But I think I'm so excited about this conversation and wish that, it would have happened for earlier generations, because I think we would be in a much different position than we are as a culture. Because I mean, we have to believe, and I believe this fully, that when you raise the possibilities and the lot and the happiness and the contentment for women, you do that for all of us, not just women. And so I'm so glad that you're writing about this and adding to that conversation. And a lot of my women friends talk about how being single mothers while being in a marriage, meaning that they were doing all of the things that a person who wasn't married was doing, but in additional work on top of that. And so thank you so much for writing about this. I'm sorry, Damien, I have not allowed you to say a single word over there. You want to add?
Damien is weighing his words very carefully.
I wanted to I was telling
you
my
sound
daughter
brassy. You sound a little brassy. Is your mic okay?
I think so.
Does he sound spiky to you?
Yeah, it sounds like jingling keys.
Yeah, like a try again. Say something else. The women have spoken.
It's almost like a metallic whistle sound.
I'm using my university computer and it's just went into power saver mode, and I think that's what's gone wild here. Am I still bad?
It's not so bad that we're dying over here, but it's like a nails on a chalkboard kind of sound.
Be brief.
Okay.
On my daughter Ondina, you were one of her favorite presenters at the conference, and we were talking about an Olivia Rodrigo song in the car. Very much the same thing that Christina was saying, about this idea where you're like, one of the big goals as an artist is to give voice to what is in other people's hearts. I think you're doing a wonderful job of that. I really liked your the sort of the perspicacity of your taxonomy of bad men. And the candor and bravery to go, about being jealous of your friend with, battling cancer, but bad form.
Yeah,
a lot of bravery to throw that out there, and self understanding to realize that sometimes who we are as people is less than entirely attractive.
Yeah, and and it's also just realizing, like, oh, the only reason that I would even be in a position to feel such a heinous thing is because of this weight of pressure and this myth that if you do not have a partner, then you're going to do it alone, when we know that it is not. Like, the number one determining factor of whether or not your partner will leave you when you are diagnosed with cancer is whether or not you're married to a man. like
that is true.
Men leave women leave their wives who are diagnosed with cancer at extraordinary rates. And so we also know that, one, this is a myth because it's not necessarily true that this person will stay by your side. And then it's also a myth because you don't just have this one person that's would be doing this labor of love to care for you if you are unwell. And so just recognizing that reality can really kind of pull you up out of those kind of like dark, icky feelings.
Yeah, and it's not just anecdotal information about, husbands leaving their wives during major life-threatening illnesses, but there's data that supports that, and it's really shocking when you start looking at those numbers and see the percentages. Meanwhile, we know that there's this current sort of with older men in our culture who are looking for a nurse with a purse, right?
Yeah.
And that's
a lot of older women do not remarry because they say that men their age are looking for a nurse or a purse. And then I saw a Twitter thread that went viral last week where this woman was talking about how her father is like 15 years older than her mother. So when her father was in his 60s, he was like traveling the world and enjoying his retirement, whereas his wife was at home taking care of his mother who was on her deathbed. And now that his wife is in her 60s and is ready to travel and have a great time, she's having to take care of him. And so she can't leave. And the daughter was talking about how, and then this cycle will just continue because my brother's wife will be expected to care for my mother. And so like, there's just like this generational ripple. Like my mom, one of my friends asked me, my mom, she's got her own house and everything. He's like, doesn't she get lonely being up in that big old house by herself? I was like, no, because she gets to do whatever she wants in that house. One time I came over, she was painting the ceilings for the hell of it, and nobody can tell her what to do. Like, it is her piece, and she's never, my mom has, I'm going to be 40 in January. My mom has never once like given me grief about not being married, not having kids. She, I think she had me at 18 and she had 3 kids before she was 25. So wow. I think for her, it's just really exciting to get to see me live a life that I want, to like travel and pursue career and to do like all of these things that don't necessarily involve, trying to make peace with a man who's trying to destroy my peace.
Well, and I think that's the bigger question. Are you as this person being added to my life, are you better than the peace I have by myself? And if you're not, then why?
Yeah, because in your 20s, your life is so chaotic that when you're dating someone chaotic, it doesn't feel out of place. But as you get older, hopefully, luckily, your life kind of starts to fall into place and settle down. So then when you're dating someone that's like bringing chaos in, it feels very loud and very disruptive.
Especially, and you're right. I mean, especially if you've gone through your career and you're at a comfortable place, but still maybe growing in your career, but you're at a point where that kind of chaos has lessened, and maybe you've bought a house already, or maybe you've gone through other like big life changes and you've sort of made it through that other side, and things are feeling settled and good and comfortable, and you've got your friends coming over and having little dinner parties, and you're enjoying like relishing the fruits of your labor. Do you really want someone to come into that and just blow it up? No.
I always say that, like, if a man is your biggest problem, that's an easy problem to fix. Like, if you're having problems at work, you can't just up and find a new job the next day in most cases. If you're dealing with your health, that's typically like a journey. You're going through family things, that's your family. But like, yeah, if some random person you brought into your life is all of a sudden destroying your happiness, you can just leave them.
Right. I mean,
you can just walk away from it all.
You're not bound for that. And I think that though, because our culture still pushes from the beginning of our existence as women, that the thing you want in life, the thing you should pursue. Do you have a boyfriend yet? You're in freaking kindergarten and people are asking you that.
Yeah.
I mean, it just makes no sense. And there's more and more books and articles and videos and movies and things that are saying to women, hey, this is your life. Build it the way you want to. And if this is what you want, then go for it. But if it's not, it's great too. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of women are thinking like the Golden Girls and sisters and friends and like, all of these different ways of cohabitating and living in groups with each other and loving each other and caring for each other, that seems like a better option than taking a risk on just one other person who might, after you dump your heart, soul, money, time, energy into them, just dump you when you're at your most vulnerable.
And I should also say that, like, I have friends who have wonderful partners. They incredible men. And that is also why I cannot settle for less, because I don't want to like settle for some dude and then I got to go see people who are actually like happily in love and like really enjoy their partner's company and this and this and that. So it's like, no, if it's not the real thing, then I don't want to waste my time on it.
I totally get that, because when you do see a couple and it truly is egalitarian, it truly is, I support you, you support me, let's share the burdens of life but also the joys in life. And then you look at some of the things that you've been presented with in your life and you're like, I'm gonna pass on that. By the way, Damien sent us this note. Thanks, Minda. Great the host with the dead laptop computer. So he's out there listening, I'm sure. But thank you.
You should have known it was coming when the power saver mode kicked in.
Oh, exactly. Thank you so much. And Damien and his daughter Ondine have raved about you and your work and your teaching and everything. So it was a pleasure to meet you and to introduce you to our audience.
Yes. Hello, audience.
So thank you for joining us, and everybody else. We're taking a break next week because it's Halloween and it's me day, because that's my birthday.
Happy early birthday.
I know, Halloween is great. And we'll be back in November with some great new writers, and we're very excited to see all of you. And oh, by the way, if you haven't donated to our North Carolina fundraiser that we had last week, there is still time. So please go to our page and donate.
I actually had to be evacuated from North Carolina because of Hurricane Helene. I was there for a writer's retreat, and we were stranded on a mountain for several days with no electricity, no running water. So having seen it firsthand, like, if you can, absolutely donate, because people are still very much going through it.
Oh yeah, this need is not going to pass. It's not like a quick fix. My house burned down several years ago, and when that happened, I lost everything, but my community didn't. So they could come in right away and go, what do you need? How can we help you? Here's a couch. Here's some money to gift cards to get you back in order to buy a pair of shoes and a new shirt. But when your whole community, and not just your community, but like a whole part of your state, the land around you, is in distress, and you can't just put that back together overnight.
No.
So we're here trying to continue raising funds and certainly raising awareness, because there's so much to be rebuilt. So thank you again, Minda, for joining us. And I look forward to reading more of your work. It's awesome.
Thank you so much, Christina. It was lovely meeting you tonight. Have a nice night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.